will be talking about synthetic disinformation. So please take it away, and then we can probably stop a few minutes before 3 o'clock for questions and comments. So thank you, Federica, for coming.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I have been following this seminar series from distance, so I was very, very honored that you asked me to take part in the series. As you can imagine, my talk is probably a bit less technical than what you usually have here, but somehow the hope is that these considerations that I will be making related to this information may also spark some further ideas to be formalized in the field that is kind of more your terrain than mine. And I'm going to present some ongoing research on disinformation. Part of it is more theoretical and part more empirically oriented, and largely stemming from the EU-funded SOLARIS project that I am coordinating. And we are already in the second year of the project, so we have, we are well in the second year, so we have a bit more than 6 months to go until it closes. Okay, so let me start with a couple of considerations about disinformation in general, because the sharing of information, and especially in written form, can be considered as the mark passing from prehistory to history, an idea that has been well explained in contexts such as the philosophy of information. But here I'm not so much interested in conceptualizing information in the technical sense, and especially allow me to make a couple of clarification, because I know that people, especially like Giuseppe, will probably object to how I'm using information. So I would totally side with philosophy of information in saying that it encapsulates the truth. And if something is not true, then it is simply not information. So technically speaking, I definitely side with this way of understanding information. However, I still find it very hard to render this idea in a non-specialized vocabulary, and the terminology has really stuck in the academic and everyday discourse. And so in a non-technical sense, everyone uses this information, so this is how I'm using it, although there is this side debate, which I'm not going to go into it. And the second consideration before I go a bit more into the contents is that disinformation is clearly not a new phenomenon, and probably it is as old as the spreading of information itself, whether orally or in a written form. So the interesting question is, what is changing and why things are changing, not only with the digital technologies, but also with AI at the moment. All right, let me begin then with something that in this literature is very common, which is the distinction between three different types: the disinformation, the misinformation, and the malinformation. And often they are distinct because of the intention. For instance, disinformation implies that there is an intention to disseminate what somebody knows that is false. Misinformation instead is also kind of false information spreading, but the person that is disseminating it does not have this knowledge, or not this intention at least. And then sometimes malinformation is used to indicate information that is based on reality somehow, but that is used to inflict harm. Not always clear whether deliberately, but I suppose so. Now, although these definitions are around, I'm not going to work with them, and I will be using this information in a much broader sense, in part because for certain questions that we might be interested in, the intention may not really matter. What may matter is the effect. Okay. And then also this does not really help me developing the argument. So whenever I will be talking about disinformation, we might be in any of the three categories, but I don't think it really makes a difference. If it does, please let me know. And so with these preliminaries in mind, the first question to ask is what is changing? And here I titled the slide Disinformation 2.0 and 3.0. The 2.0 is already what has happened with digital technologies. These have transformed the spreading of false and misleading information. We know already, and there is vast literature around related to social media and how they have facilitated and even greatly amplified phenomena such as the micro-targeting, which in turn has led also to the spreading of disinformation, manipulating public opinion, and the rest. What is also interesting to note, and I'm bringing a bit more of a philosophy of information in pills, is that digital technologies also create new ontological spaces. And so it is really hard to make this distinction anymore between the online and the offline. And so I'm totally on board with the idea of the own life dimension that philosophers of information have been using. But that's not really what I want to focus now. But although perhaps this could be an interesting question to pursue, I mean, how this blurring is also affecting how information and disinformation is spreading. And instead, the question that I'm really interested in today is what is changing with generative AI? Are we going towards a disinformation 3.0 in this case? And my impression is that generative AI is indeed is marking a difference, not just in terms of a continuation along the same lines, but I would like to argue that there is something that is changing in a deep and substantial way. And this is what I will be trying to explain in the rest of the presentation. So what is new and what is old? I'm here drawing simultaneously from literature in social epistemology and the philosophy of information a bit again. As I said, one thing that digital technologies do is to create these own life spaces, and specifically they reduce the ontological friction. We can understand the ontological friction as kind of those forces that oppose, reduce, or increase information flow. So there is a sense in which it is pretty obvious what these social media and online outlets are doing. They are making the spreading of information and disinformation way faster. At the same time, I would like to say it is not just faster, but there is something that qualitatively is different. And it is not, it is certainly draws on what is shared, how it is shared, who is sharing it, and what purposes the sharing person has, or perhaps the bots, because it's not only humans that are involved in this process, not anymore, at least. So clearly this has to do with what is changing, but oops, sorry, this was too fast. Oh, no, that's okay. But there is also something more that is changing, and this is what I'm going to try and explain next. Here I'm going to give you arguments more from a philosophy of technology perspective, and the distinction that we need to introduce is the idea of interacting through versus interacting with technologies. So when you look at these things, the social medias, etc., from the the philosophy of technology perspective, then you could see them as a medium, or as a medium through which we spread information. And the philosophy of technology has a tradition of analyzing how technologies are mediators between us humans and the world reality out there. And so this interacting through has to do with this concept of instrumentality, mediation, and also message delivery. For instance, the vocabulary and the language does not really help here. We still say that we write with the pen, but in fact, what we want to say is that through the pen, we are able to write things that we have in our head. And if you are old enough, like me, to remember telephones that were not connected to the internet, you could think of this as, just an instrument, a mediation, so a medium to deliver a message between two human beings, okay? But the situation is clearly changing, and the technologies, and this to some extent has started with digital technologies at large, but now with generative AI, this is taking a whole new dimension. We are not just using this as technology that we interact through and then to achieve something or to deliver some message. We are truly cooperating with these instruments. And so when you think of writing a message on WhatsApp that has some GenAI integrated and makes suggestion, you are effectively writing with the tool. And this is what happens all the time when we have some GenAI tool built into your Word document as well. And some of us may perceive it as an interference in our train of thought, but depending on how you use it, it could be actually a fantastic sparring partner for writing. So here I'm not to demonize, I'm just saying there is something that is changing, and this interacting with is exactly what is marking this difference. And there is more. Whether we like it or not, AI has been able to move to the foreground of sociality. So just think of the interactions that we have with the latest generation of GenAI. Just the fact that we interact in natural language allows this easiness of interaction, and we really have the perception that they are social actors pretty much like us. And here I would like to say that this type of interactions did exist before, but giving instructions to Siri, giving instructions to Alexa, where your vocabulary really has to follow stricter rules, didn't give this impression. Okay, now this doesn't work quite in English, but in Italian we would never say riproduci il brano musicale. We would say metti la canzone, right? So this obviously may sound more or less radical in one language rather than another, but clearly how we interact with this technology, and especially the use of natural language, has brought a change. And the brought is that we are interacting with them really as if they were human agents. Now, in these changes, there is one that I would like really to go deeper into, and it is the meaning making. So how these technologies, especially this GenAI tool, are participating to the production of meaning. And this has been a big change, because the production of meaning has been considered for a long time, and certainly until now, really the prerogative of human beings. Okay, and let me here take a step back. This here I want to bring in the concept of poiesis that I started developing in my work in philosophy of science and technology. What I did then was borrowing the concept of poiesis from the philosophy of information and then developing it further for techno-scientific practices. And the idea that I had was that we have to consider instruments in scientific context not just as mere instruments, but really as something that we interact with to produce scientific knowledge. Okay. And here I had two big camps that are not quite talking to each other, the philosophy of science and the philosophy of technology. And the point that I was trying to make is that there is a sense in which instruments in scientific context do count as epistemic agents, of course, with shades of gray that you need to apply. So if you're just drawing with the compass, this is a minimal epistemic import that you have from the instrument. But if you're using generative AI in AlphaFold, it probably goes to a maximum. So we need to understand this spectrum. And so what I wanted to push a bit, especially in philosophy of science, that we have to move away from this idea that knowledge is just what we humans produce, reducible to justify through belief, etc. Okay? And then from this, I wanted to make an argument to say that this really has implication for design, regulation, governance of science. And so we also need to rethink responsibility in the light of this co-production between humans and instruments. I'm making this whole digression to say that this is exactly what is happening with the generative AI use in the social media context. And when I finished my monograph, Techno-Scientific Practices, it was 2022, I was not expecting that this concept would become all of a sudden so useful to understand what is changing in the use of GenAI in a much wider context. Also, if you browse the book, there is pretty little about artificial intelligence because we were not even discussing so much the massive involvement of GenAI. Now it would be a totally different part of the book that I would write. So what changes then? What are these modes of co-production in digital environments and especially in social media context? LLMs have become super widespread and also very, very quickly. And we need to understand what we are co-producing and how. We are co-producing text. Any moment you have some GenAI built-in tool, you effectively co-produce text. We also co-produce speech, either because we can clone part of our voice and we can reproduce it. We can produce a whole of a speech entirely. We can produce images now also with both kind of the combination of text and visuals and clearly the videos. And here really the concept of poiesis that in the beginning I had developed for this techno-scientific context is exactly what is happening, except that back then, my argument was by and large descriptive, how we make science with instruments. And here, I think it also makes some alarm bells to ring, of course, because there are important consequences and these are under our eyes. Deepfakes spreading that I will be talking about in a minute, the whole discussion about generative AI in education that all of us are confronted with in our roles as teachers, for instance. So there is this clearly touches every one of us and not just a certain part of the population or the academic population. Now, let me be super clear. I'm not ascribing thoroughly meaning the ability of understanding to these tools. Some people have been using this metaphor of the statistical parrots, and clearly LLMs and the GenAI are statistical parrots. They do not genuinely understand, and they do not genuinely create any original thinking or any original content. Still, they do generate content. And even this type of generation contributes to the meaning making, to the building and establishing and also spreading of narratives. And I will come back later to this idea of narratives. So to make it fully clear, this is not to say all of a sudden these are intelligent technologies. They are not, and honestly, I don't think we should even go into that discussion. There is also interesting literature explaining that they are totally dumb, fine, okay, but they do participate, and they do participate especially in this kind of co-production of meaning that happens with us humans. And this is what I'm going to try and explain in a bit more detail, and where the work I've done with the colleagues in the Solaris project comes in. We have started thinking that what we are dealing with at the moment are not just socio-technical systems, but synthetic socio-technical systems. So socio-technical systems is a kind of a concept that has been around in the STS literature for quite a while. What we do know is that technology and society stand in this reciprocal relation. Clearly, these systems are not just technical, they are really socio-technical because of the way they are designed, the way they operate in a society, the way in which we use them, okay? But this is what I was already trying to anticipate earlier. The newest generation of these technologies are also social actors, okay? They are taking on to more social roles, and they also change social practices. Some of them have quite a bit of autonomy. Some of these bots are really able to interact in a social media environment, generating content that seem pretty appropriate for any given context, okay? In this paper that appeared in Philosophy of Technology last year, what we wanted to emphasize is that these socio-technical systems have become synthetic. I'm not sure whether synthetic is really the correct word here, but we use the synthetic to signal that the border between human and artificial behavior and communication has become blurred. Their functioning, the functioning of this technology is different, and also our communication has become kind of more integrated through these technologies. And that's why we use the term synthetic, precisely to mention this deep interaction. Some other colleagues mentioned to me that symbiotic would have been a better concept. I'm open to revise the terminology, but I hope you get what I'm trying to develop as an idea, why they are not the traditional socio-technical system as we have used them before. And here it is a good moment to introduce the case of deepfakes that we are studying in this Solaris project. The literature in general, or the discourse, tends to put all the emphasis on the output, the creation of a deepfake video or a deepfake image. And sorry, before I go on, just to clarify, so far I've been talking about generative AI for the creation of text and visuals, but the Solaris project is really about audiovisual content. So this is what I'm going to focus on for the rest of the presentation, but I think this can be easily extended to text as well. So a lot of focus on the output, and especially the idea has been, how is the output going to be so good that we cannot discriminate between the true and the false content anymore. This is probably going to be the moment in which we have to worry about so much spreading of deepfake. And what we have done in the project is to borrow some old good Latour and actor network theory, and showing that it is wrong to just focus on the output. And we had tried to lay down the broader network in which the output, the deepfake output, is part of. This starts with some development of GenAI technologies, a whole chain of distribution. Then you have the output. The output circulates through certain online infrastructures, and not just online, because you may be saying to your friend, have you seen this? And then you go online and check what has been sharing. There is the user reception, so really how we understand what is going on. This creates a public discourse also with respect to a target, and all this is in a context of policy and legislative interventions. Okay, so just to focus on the technical qualities of deepfakes seem to be too limited to understand what is going on and what are the worrying characteristics of this phenomenon. What we have done in the project, in our first use case, looking at this network, was to focus on the user reception. And here we have run an empirical study to understand how users, normal users, trust the veridicity of this content. And we developed a psychometric scale for perceived trustworthiness of AI generated content. I'll say a bit more later, but just to give you an idea of the results, they are not very encouraging, because what we have found out, and in line with our initial hypothesis and also the theoretical framework of this network approach, is that the vast majority of people will swallow deep fakes no matter how bad they are. Okay, they will be inclined to reshare even if they are not sure, and they will not be able to discriminate even bad videos. Okay, and we have done empirical studies on this, so this is backed up through quite solid empirical validation. In our second use case, we focused more on the online circulation and how this connects to the policy and the legislation side. Just 2 weeks ago, we had an intense 2 days with various stakeholders from media, journalism, and also representatives of institutions to understand how the deepfake spread, what kind of measures are in place, and whether there are mitigation measures that can work. And one thing that we have learned, for instance, is that big press agencies such as ANSA in Italy, ANSA is one of our partners, have a pretty solid workflow. And so it is very unlikely that a deep fake will makes it through the crack and ANSA will spread a deep fake, because they have various checkpoints and of course they have expertise. We cannot say the same for any type of newspaper, depending on the on what kind of technical tools they have, how much expertise they have, and of course, if you look at the social media environment, now it is even worse, because what is happening with dismantling fact-checking mechanisms in social media. So you will see what is happening. And our further use case has been instead focusing not only on the online circulation, but also on the creation of the public discourse and especially the perception of the citizen. Here asking, but is there any potential good use of this deepfake? For instance, if we use deepfake to convey positive and constructive messages, and we have co-constructed videos, for instance, with Marie Curie talking about her experience and passion for science as a way of encouraging and motivating young girl in going into STEM education. Now, this deepfake is technically the same as making a deepfake of Zelensky, you see, but of course, there are also a number of legal procedures. Is it okay to deepfake a dead person? So it's not that easy, but you see the idea behind. Would we accept one and not the other? Why not? And of course, this ethics of technology is looming large, and we are still in the process of elaborating a lot of the results and the reflections that will follow. And so, what is happening then? I come back here to the idea of the narrative and the fact that deepfakes are more than just AI-generated videos or AI-generated images plus audio. I come back to the idea that in some way they participate in the generation of some meaning, and so they we have to analyze them also from this perspective. Is there perhaps old wine then in new bottles? Here I'm going back again to some social epistemology. What we had before was this idea that images and later on videos are what ensures the truthfulness of testimony. Okay, so before, and think of journalism, if you could show the picture, this would increase your attitude of believing the news, okay, in trusting the contents. And videos have pushed this back, not just the image, but the fact that it is a video, it moves, you can see the context, and even in colors, not black or white. This is exactly what is giving kind of more reality or to these tools. This is exactly the idea of the epistemic backstop that has been developed by Regina Rini. What is happening with deepfakes here is that they break this idea of testimony and of the relation between this audiovisual content and reality, because we cannot trust anymore the picture or the video. Okay, so they are really creating distrust rather than trust in the relation between the audiovisual content and reality. We have to bring in some questions of intentions back here, because and this is something that I learned from our colleagues in the consortium working in semiotics and visual semiotics in particular. The manipulation of images is not a new thing. We have been photoshopping images for 20 years now. Why are we not worried by Photoshop in the same way as we are worried by guns and the whole types of technologies that are now able to create deepfake in 3 seconds? Okay? And what I learned from visual semiotics here is that the intention of a Photoshop manipulation is mainly to improve what we have, to make it better, prettier, okay, but not to deceive. So there is an intentional stance in using the deepfake that apparently, this is what I'm learning, is not there with the deepfake. And perhaps also the fact that with Photoshop it remains with static images also plays a role. So from the perspective of semiotic, it also makes a difference that we are manipulating videos under motion, because we are really altering what we thought was really the gateway to reality. You know, the video seemed more real precisely because we get this sense of I really see what happened instead of just having the static snapshot. So really a lot to think about with what is changing. Okay, so the deceiving part seems to be really important. We should really then, I think, go deeper into this question of testimony and what ensures trust. If we are pushing back the epistemic backstop, then clearly the deepfake is not just a manipulated audiovisual. It is working in pretty much the same way as arguments work. And here I am finally kind of reconnecting with work I have done for a few years now with Jean Wagemans at the University of Amsterdam in argumentation theory, and trying to understand what is the role of arguments in disinformation, and especially how we can empower citizens, students to understand more the working of arguments without pretending that everyone becomes suddenly a specialist in argumentation theory, which is clearly not realistically. Arguments convey ideas. They have a narrative that is built through them. And this is very important because this can also be taken an argument as an argument to question the value of fact-checking. We cannot fact-check everything, just as we cannot debunk every single deepfake. So this solution is not going to be, oh, we need just to increase the fact-checking or the debunking. Clearly, it is just so bad that if Facebook does not have proper fact-checking anymore, but we cannot think that this is the solution, okay? Now, it seems to me that this is opening up a very interesting area for collaboration between argumentation theory, rhetoric, and semiotic that I'm hoping to pursue further, even beyond the Solaris project. And if we have time, I would like to show you some videos that we have produced in the Solaris project to support this idea that it is not the quality that matters only, but is also how they build a narrative. Do I have a bit of time? Or, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, you do.
So, I hope they will work in the embedded PowerPoint. So what you have here are 3 videos of Greta Thunberg. One is a real video, and you may have seen many of those. We'll probably not watch all of them, but just to give you a sense. So this is Greta Thunberg making her usual speech about why we have to act on urgently on climate change. Let me see. Can you hear it? No. Yes. Wait. Let me see.
So it's the greatest and most complex challenge.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, it's very low, but we can.
The main solution, however, is so simple that even a small child can understand it. We have to stop the emissions of greenhouse gas.
Okay, so this is Greta Thunberg. You may have seen a number of these videos, and then what we did because in the project was creating 2 deepfakes. One is high quality generated content with a speech that is aligned with the beliefs of the speaker. This is the one.
Today, young people are sitting in conferences to demand climate justice. For decades, activists and scientists have warned about the catastrophic consequence of continued exploitation of the planet. Yet our politicians choose to ignore us, prioritizing short-term profits over our future.
So this is pretty high quality, although you may notice that there is sometimes a bit of disalignment between the mouth, the words, and the speech is not supernatural. But what you hear from her is, this is really Greta Thunberg, that might work. But here is another one where we have low quality of the video and a message that is the opposite.
All a big hoax, cooked up by those who want to control us and take our hard-earned money. There's no scientific consensus. It's all just fear-mongering and manipulation. We don't need to take drastic action and cripple our economy over something that's not even real.
Now is the time to speak clearly.
Okay, so
solving the climate crisis is the greatest and most complex.
Sorry, I don't know why the other one started. So it was interesting when we ran the empirical study to see how people reacted to these 3 videos, and they could not really make a difference between the high quality one and the bad quality one. And so this is really worrying, because if a low quality video, and especially with a message that is opposite to what you would expect from Greta Thunberg, can just go through without people thinking twice, is it true, should I share it? Then we are really in a hard position here. What do we do? And we are not, of course, the first one ringing the alarm bell about the need for more media literacy, digital literacy. But this to me was really important, because it meant, again, that we cannot just focus on how good is the quality and should we worry once it is good enough. There will be crap, and there is crap circulating already now, and that isn't of good quality, and the modes of spreading, who is spreading, whether it is your best friend sending you this, or whether you see it on the web page of an authoritative newspaper or press agency, should make a difference. So that's why we need this network approach to deepfake, and not just focus on the technical qualities of the deepfake. And so I hope you see how all these things start coming together. All right. Oops, sorry. I don't know why I do this. It has done it again. I try to move the slides, and then all of a sudden I get the videos going. Sorry. Let me see if this works. What are the challenges ahead then? Unsurprisingly, digital media AI literacy is clearly vital at this point. One thing that we will be looking at in the project is what are already the tools in place, and what else can we do, but also what are the good places for literacy intervention. Here it will be handy to come back to the network approach, as I will do in a second. There is a lot of emphasis given to empowering citizens through education, trying to have citizens developing more self-awareness, who you are and what is your infosphere, what is your network like. This is exactly what we all have to learn. And clearly some generations are struggling more than others, especially the elderly and the young ones. They have different types of struggles, but equally a struggle. The generations in between, there should be a separate discourse, but in principle we are more literate. developing caution. What are the grounds to believe in social media content? And here again, the idea of the narrative, the argumentation theory becomes very important, because it's not just, oh, is this video bad, therefore you should disbelieving or start doubting. No, there is way more that we have to use that goes beyond just the quality of the video. Also proactiveness, how we can make our environments safer for others. And this is where the argumentation skills for me really come in. What do I know to judge quality and sources of information? All of a sudden, we need to know more than just reading an article of a newspaper and understanding what it says, but also judging from a post on Instagram or on Facebook beyond really the quality of the image or beyond the quality of the video. The two become really intertwined, and this is an area that needs development. Let me go back now to the idea of the network. I think the idea of the network becomes useful because now we are putting all the emphasis on the citizens as if it is just our responsibility to become more literate, to understand more, to become more cautious. And here I would like to become more normative even and say, what is the responsibility of the tech developers? Now you could say, oh, but we have the AI Act for this. Yes, in part. This is really a difficult conversation to have, because what is happening is the European Commission trying their best to give safeguards without stopping innovation, as they say, and we may wonder whether we may need really kind of more action from the side of the regulators. And just to conclude, this again comes from the project I'm coordinating at the moment, where we have a lot of interaction with journalists and media outlets, and clearly there is a lot of responsibility that they also have. Some of them, they are probably in a better position because they have better tools not to spread disinformation, and yet they still have a responsibility. And so I wonder whether this is also an opportunity to talk about values and a new ethos for information, the value of visuals, the power of arguments, how the two combines, and perhaps even going back to giving more power to the words, although now that we can also generate text so easily, this will be really a difficult and muddled terrain. So this is where I am. I really thank you for your attention, and I hope we have enough time for discussion. I am really curious to see how these ideas strike you. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have time because you've been perfect with timing. So yeah, I see a couple of raised hands already. So Eichel, you're first, please.
Yeah,
more than a couple. Yeah, please.
I'm not surprised. This was so interesting, Federica. Thank you very much. Really interesting work. I have actually many, but I'll just choose one. And I'll choose the sort of question that raises a worry or a concern that maybe is naive. I mean, as you know, it's not exactly my area. But here is the thing. So I very much sympathize, and I think is the way to go forward, phrasing this in terms of focusing on the argumentation side. Right? Is the polarization comes from just looking at the output, right? The so-called fact, and clearly neglecting all the reasons that lead to a position, right? And very often the actual position is not as important as the reasons that you hold that leads you to hold that position. Having said all that, and I'm biased because as a logician, I'm really interested in that. But I really worry, especially in this co-productive digital system, because we all have a bias for narratives, and AI systems are really good at putting up narratives that can be very completely not grounded on anything trustworthy. Yes. So I worry in particular about medical applications, yes. Right? If you interact with GenAI and gives a very, very articulated sort of diagnosis that doesn't make any sense but sounds authoritative, I'm fairly sure many clinicians will find that superior to their own judgment.
Yeah.
Right? And the more we insist on that being sort of transparent and argumentative, the larger the damage will be. Maybe I'm overly pessimistic, but I wanted to sort of
I think you nail it down. So what I said earlier is a description of what is happening, this co-production of meaning. Then I think we should really start the thorough normative discourse. When are we okay with co-producing and when are we not, and to what extent? Okay, the medical example that you give, I think is excellent. Maybe we should ban it. You see, I think there may be areas where we should be really radical and say you should not do it, period. Okay, education is another good example. Now there was recently an article shared by Luciano Floridi about this idea of the distant writing that you do with AI, which is of course a great idea. Now, if you are Alessandro Baricco, it's a great idea. If you are Luciano Floridi, a philosopher that knows how to write, it's a great idea. Not a student. A student cannot do distant writing. Okay, so no. And this is exactly where we have to work, understanding when yes and when no, precisely for the reasons that you say. It's not just the output and the fact, but it's all the reasons, all the context. And that's why we need more of argumentation theory. And now with the visuals, we need to understand how visuals functions like arguments as well. So 100%, please contact me. Let's do a big project on this. Because we really need.
I'm absolutely up for it. And many more in the group, I think, will be. Yeah. So, yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Esther. Yes, thank you very much for the talk. It was very interesting. When you were telling us about you showed us the 3 videos, and I was thinking I was focusing on myself, how I would react to these videos. Yeah. And I thought, okay, the first fake videos, there was little contradiction with what I was expecting. While in the second, there was a lot of contradiction with what I was expecting. So I think in the end, when we discover that there is something that doesn't really working is when we discover contradiction. Yeah. So I think one of the problems we might have is how do we perceive contradiction? Yeah. So I don't know if this can have a role in the argument and how can be used in a good way. I don't know.
Yes, Esther, it does. And we have done a similar exercise for our use case too. We have produced videos. One was about an explosion in a nuclear plant somewhere. And then another one it was funny because it was during the election of the new Pope. So we had a fake video saying that was a cardinal being caught, in the Sixtine Chapel with the phone, And we sent this video to our colleagues at ANSA, and they examined the videos. For them, they spotted in 3 seconds these contradictions that you are talking about. But also the context is different. This is their job. So their job is opening their computer. There is material coming in, examining them. They are journalists, trained in media, blah, blah, blah. They will notice these contradictions. Now, You, me, any one of us, you are killing time waiting for the bus, and you have a video passing through your phone. How attentive are you going to be to this contradiction? Zero. None. This is exactly the trick. So it is not just the video, it is whole the context. And so maybe it means that we have to become slower. We should stop just using social media for killing time, but it should be an activity, just as we did in the old times. We bought the newspaper, we went to a bar and drinking coffee, half an hour, we really read the newspaper. I don't know, I'm just speculating we do what is going to be. It is also this consuming very fast. And this is how they work, all the TikTok machinery works with that, the Instagram, same thing. So I think you spotted it right, but maybe we need to formalize more these connections. This is where I'm looking at you more into the logic terms. What kind of agent am I? How I interact? How these things happen? Maybe we need to even give more evidence for this problem so that the regulation also follows or education also follows. So thank you for noticing this, because that was exactly the point.
Okay, so it's now 3 p.m. So if you were serious about giving us 5 more minutes, then we can.
You deserve it. You are way more interesting than my next meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so we will try to be very quick so we can have more questions. Please, Giuseppe.
Okay, I can't ask then my 3 questions, but I'll ask one, which is a follow-up on Eichel's question. So you have pointed out that this notion of border interface, this language of interaction, and it struck me your example about we wouldn't say in Italian, please reproduce songs XXX, right? But this reminded me, something that annoys me terribly, is nowadays when we pass in front of a big poster of a new LP, CD, or whatever thing produced and out in Italy, it doesn't say available on all platforms, which would be the natural thing to say. It says fuori adesso, which in Italian, which is the translation of out now, right? Which is what they use in English. But for us, for me at least, is completely natural. So this quickly going says, there has been this other example where they have put 2 artificial agents, right? One making reservation, the other collecting reservations, right? Bookings, not reservation, bookings. And then what happens is that in the experiment, the 2 artificial agents recognizes each other as artificial, and the protocol allows them to speak in low-level language. So basically, they start making the transaction that they have to do, and that's completely obscure to any human, right? So a human reading it, listening to it wouldn't understand. My question is, do you think is there an imbalance in this language of interaction between human and agents, right? Do you think we are moving towards a imbalance in favor of the agents, and will that affect our ability to control?
Interesting.
By email.
Yeah, please no, I don't know. I think what you are pointing out is super interesting, and of course I'm not up to date with how Italian is changing also as an effect of these things. So it is okay that language changes. I mean, natural languages have been changed all the time, right? But the way in which they are changing now, it is for us to adapt to the technology somehow. So maybe we have to be a bit self-reflective and normative about this is a change that we want. I'm not putting it in terms of right or wrong, really something that we want or we do not want. And not because the pure Italian language becomes corrupted, but simply because it may obscure exactly what kind of relationship. So maybe, I mean, my personal view is that I would prefer still talking to Alexa in the Alexa language rather than using this more natural language of ChatGPT and any other GenAI tool, you see. So I don't know what is, I have a hard time really deciphering what is happening. And I even a harder time in saying what we should be doing, because I would like to talk to the developers and the big tech company and say, what is really your big mission there? And it's not that I want to play the conspiracy theory card all the time, but I mean, is this a desirable present and future that we want? I don't know. So I think you are fully right. And the short answer is I have no clue. I think I am as puzzled as you. And please send the other questions.
Giovanni, super quick, and then we need to go.
Yeah, but on my side, it's kind of a provocative question, actually. I was just wondering, like, if I think now the use of social media, as you were mentioning before, most of the time, it's not for information, it's more for entertainment. And so, and I also know that people, especially, you know, young people growing up since the early age with social media, like they're very keen and very good at you know, picking the material that is actually original and some stuff that is actually, you know, AI generated. So I'm wondering, like, to what extent do you think that, you know, this kind of content that is generated by AI is harmful, and to what extent actually, you know, even European Union can and should regulate on this kind of stuff, especially since, again, like the whole purpose of social media right now is more entertainment than actual information. So, you know, like it will be regulating a field that it will just be misplacing social media as a platform of just pure information instead of entertainment.
Yeah. I think you ask a super tough question, Giovanni. So first, maybe let me try the escape route. Ask me again in 6 months when we will have the recommendations written down from the project. But apart from that, I would say, yes, it is true that social media are for entertainment. At the same time, you have the vast majority of press agencies, of newspapers also on social media, right? And it is in a sense way easier to follow them on social media. And also to the point now, and I tried that if you want to do really an old-fashioned thing, which is have a subscription to the paper version of them, it is super hard to have it. They will push you to have it in a digital form. But then you may think, I don't want to be on my screen all the time. And so, you know, we are back on square one. So I really don't know how we should tackle this, because there seems to be a legitimate point that we want to use the social media for entertainment. But even if it is for entertainment, a lot it is used also for some kind of communication. Think of all that goes on TikTok and Instagram related to gender and sexuality and identity and all these things. This is a vehicle for these people to inform, to spread, to share their experience. Something that they would have not via the usual media channels or the legitimate ones. I have really a hard time, and I hope in the project we will able to make at least categories, classifications of how to start the discourse on regulation in a way that does not just throw away the baby with the bath water, but then it is still becomes useful. So thank you for mentioning this, because it looks like I know all the answers, but as you can say from the Q&A, I do not. I clearly do not.
I think this calls for a discussion is probably like 4 or 5 hours long, so maybe we should reschedule at some point.
With pleasure.
All right, so I think it's time for us to thank our speaker again
for
a great talk and a great discussion, and see you all to the next seminar.
Thank you so much for having me, for the very nice questions. And if you have ideas to develop some of these things further, you know how to find me. Okay, super. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.